Hello again and welcome back to the next part of my top 20 countdown. Today I'm going to be counting down games 15 to 11. But just before I start, I just want to bring to your attention a very cool and innovative project which is currently on Kickstarter, and actually it's already funded on Kickstarter. It is a game system called Gemji, and it offers a limitless board game experience. It's an entire system made out of 70 double-sided magnetic tiles. Using only those tiles you can play and adapt classic and familiar games. You can invent your own games and you can publish them online. The starter pack has 30 plus games and includes access to the online platform for the Gemji community, and you can find all the game rules on that platform. For more information, check the link in the description. So back to the countdown, and as I said, I'm going to be counting down 15 to 11 today, and this part of the countdown actually contains 3 games that I don't own. So anyway, without further ado, let's crack on. So number 15 in my top 20 is Eclipse, New Dawn for the Galaxy. So Eclipse was one of the first real heavy epic games I played when I got reintroduced to this hobby back in 2015. It absolutely blew me away after the first few plays. It's been a while since I've played it now, and my mate who owns the game has actually recently purchased the second edition. He got it on Kickstarter, which we haven't yet to play that. I'm very excited to give that a try. So just forgive me if my memory is a little foggy. As I said, I don't own the game and it's been a couple of years I think since we played it. So on the face of it, Eclipse is an epic 4X game of galactic conquest and war. But for me, when you're playing it, it does have a lot of mechanics that you would associate with a traditional Euro. You got action selection, resource management, upkeep of your resources. It has an element of engine building to it as well with regards to upgrading your ships. I always feel the stress of a Euro when you're scrabbling around to get enough resources to fund all the cool things that you want to do on your turn. The scoring is done similarly to a lot of Euros as well. You get points for all the planets you control, for all the buildings that you've built, and for the different tech and upgrades that you have on your player board. But then it really does have this Ameritrash feel to it. As you're exploring new systems, you're battling your opponents and the ancients, which are non-playing kind of characters in the game. You're rolling handfuls of dice in your space battles, and it does have a bit of randomness to it when it comes to exploring those new systems. The systems are all face down, and as you explore, you will flip them obviously, and you can get like a tile that has loads of planets with abundance of resources. Sometimes you can bump into the nasty ancients who you'll have to fight to then gain control of that system. So sometimes it can be a bit harsh if you like all the tiles you've explored around your home world don't offer too many resources, and you kind of have to then build up to go and battle these ancients. It has an abundance of races to choose from, and all the races have asymmetrical abilities, so you get loads of replayability from that. And the last time we did play it, it did go on a little bit. We played a 6-player game, and it lasted 5 to 6 hours. And it was the first time I've played this game maybe 6 to 8 times, and that was the first time that it felt like it dragged a little bit towards the end. But like as I said, for the most part, I always have a blast playing this game, and I'm really excited to try the second edition. So that was my number 15 game, and that was Eclipse. At number 14, we have Underwater Cities. Now, Underwater Cities is a relatively new game to me. I've only played it twice competitively, but I have played it loads solo. In Underwater Cities, the Earth has become overcrowded, and all the countries and the big corporations have decided that it's time to establish a new home on the ocean floor. You'll be building kelp farms to feed your population, desalinization plants to provide water, and underwater laboratories that will give you the tech needed to build your network of cities and tunnels and connect all your cities together. So players will take turns. You will play cards from their hands to perform actions on the main board. The interesting thing about underwater cities is that the actions are split over 3 different colours on the main board, and the cards you will be drawing will match the different coloured actions on the board. And when you play a card from your hand, if it matches the colour of the action that you want to do, then you also get the bonus of the card. But if you do an action, for example, on the yellow part of the board and you play a green card, then you will only get to do the action. But if you play a yellow action and you then play a yellow card with it, you get to do both the action and the action on the card. Now these cards can have instant abilities. A lot of them have ongoing abilities that you use that are triggered when you do certain things, and then there is some of them, especially later in the game, that will have end game scoring bonuses. There is an element of engine building to it from the cards that have the ongoing abilities, and also from buildings that you place on your player board, as you're going to be getting points and production for them. There's 3 production phases in the game, so the more buildings and the more cities and connections you have, the more points and the more resources you're going to produce each production phase. Underwater Cities is a brilliant game. It has a nice mixture of mechanics. You have like worker placement, you've got engine building. It's full of tough and meaningful decisions on your turn. The action spaces are limited, so if someone takes an action, then no one else can use that action space for the rest of the round. So you need to have a plan A, B, and sometimes C in case people are taking the action spaces that you want. The one slight criticism I have is that the components that come in the base game aren't great. The board is fine and the cards, but the chits and everything just for a game that costs 50 plus pounds, I just didn't feel the component quality was up to the standard. Now I've upgraded all the resource tokens and the action tokens, and you'll see that in the pictures. So they don't come with the game, so the resources you see in the pictures I've added, they're not the resources that come in the game. The expansion, so the New Discoveries expansion actually adds these amazing recessed player boards, so all your cities and your tunnels and all will sit into them. So that was a great addition to the base game. Yeah, it does have a relatively steep learning curve. There's a lot going on in this game, but like a lot of games, it does click after 2 or 3 rounds. Thematically out of the box, because as I said, the component quality didn't really do it for me. There wasn't a whole lot of theme there, but I think since I've added the upgraded components and the recessed boards that have come with the expansion, I feel the theme shines through a lot more and it feels a more complete game now. But Underwater Cities is a great game, and that's why it's number 14 on my list. So a conversation I always find myself having with other people is the importance of theme in a game. Now personally, I always prefer to have a game that has strong mechanics, and if there is a cool theme that shines through, then I kind of count that as a bonus. I have got exceptions to that rule in terms of, in my list so far, I have Battlestar Galactica and Western Legends. And both of those games are dripping in theme, and the mechanics in the game are decent to good, but the thing that brings me back to them games is the thematic experience. The reason I'm bringing this up now is because the next game I'm going to talk about is literally saturated in theme, and that game is War of the Ring, which is number 13 on my list, and this is another game that I don't own. The first time I played War of the Ring, it absolutely just blew my mind. Basically, it's all three of the Lord of the Rings books and movies, uh, beautifully molded into an absolutely epic, amazing board game. This is one of those games that I always feel like I'm just about to go on an epic journey when I sit down to play it. It does usually take us 5 to 6 hours to play, but I mean, I always love every second of it. It's a two-player game, and in it you will either play the Free Peoples, which will include the Fellowship and the Elves and the Dwarves, or the Shadow Forces of Sauron, so the Orcs and the Goblins and all the Uruk-hai and the Ring Wraiths, so they're all the bad guys. And it's almost like there's two games going on in War of the Ring, because you have this hidden movement part where, as the Free Peoples, they're trying to get the Fellowship to Mordor and into Mount Doom, so they can destroy the One Ring. And you're trying to do that obviously secretly, trying to remain hidden for as long as you can to get as close as you can to Mount Doom. The Shadow player can hunt, and so basically what they're doing is they're just drawing tiles from a bag to see if they can find you or try and corrupt the ring bearer. And this leads into one of the victory conditions. So for the Free People, basically, if they make it to the Crack of Doom space on Mount Doom without having got 12 corruption, they will win the game. If the Shadow player can corrupt the ring bearer, get 12 corruption, then that's one way the Shadow forces can win the game. But then you also have like the epic military side to it. Like the Shadow forces just start with an almost overwhelming amount of miniatures on the board and armies. They can achieve a military victory by conquering Free People's territories up to 10 victory points. So each territory will have, like, whether it's worth 1 victory point or 2 victory points. And so if the Shadow forces capture 10 victory points worth of Free People's territories, they'll win the game. The Free Peoples can also have a military victory, but they only need to capture 4 victory points worth of Shadow territories. Now that is a lot easier said than done, because, as I said, the Shadow players do have like just armies everywhere, and the Free People start off with a lot less miniatures on the board, and there's a political part to the game where it does take the Free Peoples a bit longer to get to be able to like recruit different units. So you do feel like a lot more stress in this game when playing the Free People. So how you play the game is quite simple. You'll roll a certain amount of dice, each player, and these dice have different actions on them, so you spend the dice to carry out various actions like moving your troops, building more units, moving the Fellowship, hunting the Fellowship, using your different characters and their abilities, and resolving event cards. And that is where the theme really just comes through in the event cards, in the characters and their abilities, and how you move the characters around the board and send them to do different things. Thematically, their abilities always linked to how them characters were portrayed in the books and the movies. And it's just, this game just absolutely amazing. As I said, it's just dripping with Lord of the Rings theme. It immerses you in the Lord of the Rings lore. It keeps you absolutely hooked, and throughout the game it's always really tense. Combat is quite simple, but it's exciting, and any games I've played, they've always gone down to the wire. They've always been very close. Whereas the Free Peoples, they're on Mount Doom ready to throw the ring in, but then the Shadow player will go and conquer that last territory he needs for his military victory. But yeah, always been very close. I mean, it's played on a massive board which has the map of Middle-earth. The components are amazing. The art on the board is just beautiful, and the art on all the different event and character cards is amazing. There's like tons of miniatures, and the component quality of the game is excellent. There is like a super deluxeified edition which costs a few £100, which I've seen pictures of, and it just looks unbelievable. I would recommend this game to anybody, but if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, it's just, you have to play this game. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you got to stick War of the Ring on your bucket list right now. So number 12 on my list is Lords of Waterdeep. Now this is another game that I don't own, that close friends in my gaming group own. So if Catan, Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride are classed as like gateway games into the hobby, then I always kind of look at Lords of Waterdeep as kind of your next step into a bit more complexity, and like for me it is the quintessential gateway game to worker placement games. Thematically, it's based on in the Dungeons and Dragons world in the legendary city of Waterdeep, and you will be playing secret lords trying to influence and take control of the city from the shadows, basically. You'll be sending your agents out to the city to recruit adventurers that you're going to send on quests. Your agents will be buying buildings which open up more action spaces, and then you'll be playing intrigue cards which can help you and can be a little bit nasty for your opponents. It's like Lords of Waterdeep. It's a relatively simple game. On your turn, there's up to two things you can do. You can send an agent out to do an action on the board, or once you've done that, then if you have the right amount of adventurers to complete a quest, then you can basically send them adventurers off on the quest and complete the quest. Quests will be what give you most of your victory points in this game, and then each lord will give you bonuses depending on what quests you've been completing. And there is other lords that give you bonuses for building buildings and stuff like that, but you don't reveal that till the end of the game. You reveal your lord at the end of the game and the bonuses that he will give you. The reason I love this game is it's easy to learn and play, but like there's enough interaction going on between players in terms of you can block people, like because the action spaces are limited to one agent apart from the harbour. You can block people. Also you got the intrigue cards which add a little bit of take that to it, and they can be quite nasty. I have to add a caveat at this point, and I don't think this game would be at such a lofty position in my countdown without the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion, as I feel that that expansion really elevates Lords of Waterdeep from a good game to a great game. It adds extra actions, but also corruption, which will count against you at the end of the game, and that adds just enough complexity to the game that it makes your decisions a little tougher, as the bonus, as the new actions, they give you more powerful rewards, but you gain corruption, so you gotta weigh up the risk and the reward. And then you also, if you're doing a lot of these actions that give you corruption, then you have to figure out a way to try and get rid of a lot of that corruption before you get stung with minus points when you're totting up at the end of the game. Like I guess at this stage, Lords of Waterdeep must be classed as a classic game, at least a classic worker placement game. It's a game I play at any time, anywhere. Also, as I said before, with the caveat that we'll have to play with the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion, because it is really an awesome expansion. So that was Lords of Waterdeep, and that was number 12. So number 11 on my list, and it's the second game to feature from the Matagot trilogy of area control games, which includes Inish, which was my number 20, Cyclades, and this beast, which is Kemet. So I would describe Kemet as a brutal area control game. It's completely geared towards just attack, attack, attack. There's no point in sitting back in this game and building up your forces, hoping to pounce later on because the game will just be over. So Kemet is set in ancient Egypt, and you will be controlling armies, and you will be sending your armies out to fight other players, to try and take control of temples, to try and take control of other people's territories and their pyramids. Along the way, you're going to be purchasing power tiles, and these power tiles are going to give you special abilities, and they also allow you to recruit these mythical beasts and add them to your different armies. So Kemet is usually played to either 8 or 10 victory points. We usually play the 8 victory point game, and that's one of the things I love about it, is that the victory points you gain, you've got 2 types. You've got temporary ones and you've got permanent victory points. You can get permanent victory points from winning the battle as an attacker. You also get permanent victory points. There's one of the temples that you can sacrifice some of your men, and that will give you a permanent victory point. Temporary victory points, so if you control a temple, you get a temporary victory point. You lose control of the temple, then you hand over that temporary victory point to whoever's just taking control. If you manage to control 2 temples at the end of a game round, you will get 1 permanent victory point for that. There is permanent victory points on some of the power tiles. So as you can imagine, with all those ways of getting victory points, it doesn't take very long for someone to get to 8 or 10, whichever you're playing. Another way of getting temporary victory points is to upgrade your pyramids to a level 4. And this is one of the other things I love about the game, is that each pyramid colour corresponds to basically the colour of the different power tiles. And there are 4, each power tile has 4 tiers, so you've got tier 1 to 4. And the higher the tier, the more powerful tiles you can purchase. But to access them higher tiered power tiles, you need to upgrade the pyramid of that colour. So for example, if you wanted to purchase a tier 3 red power tile, you would have had to upgrade your red pyramid to at least 3. The maximum you can upgrade it to is 4, and as soon as you have fully upgraded any of your pyramids, you will get a temporary victory point for each pyramid that you upgrade to 4. Now, the reason it's temporary is because if someone attacks your home city and takes your pyramid off you, then they will get that temporary victory point. So that's a sneaky way of like getting a level 4 pyramid, is to basically attack and take it off somebody else. So for me, Kemet is basically a race. You're racing to get the most powerful power tiles before anybody else. That's going to bolster your armies and give you more abilities. You're then obviously racing to get to the 8 points to win the game. It is brutal, as I said. You will be fighting in your first round. There's no value whatsoever in just holding back, sitting there and see what happens. Just get out there, build your armies and fight. Even if you do take early setbacks, which can happen, you can get back into this game. You can build up again quite quickly and get your armies back out there with the help of some of them power tiles. You also have these divine intervention cards, which are basically take that cards. So they can give you they can help you, but then a lot of them will hinder your opponents. Combat is really good. It's card based and depending on how many men you have in there, but it is done in such a way where you can actually, and it's happened to me where I've won a combat, but the other player can still wound your men. So I've won a combat, but I've ended up with no men to actually take over the temple or whatever I was trying to do. Which, yes, you get the victory point for winning the battle, but you don't get to take over the area. You've just won the battle in. So that can be like add a layer of strategy to combat itself, because you kind of always have to make sure, you're trying to win the fight, but you also have to try and make sure you protect your men so that your men don't get wiped out. It's Kemet is brilliant. It's a brilliant area control game. It's easy to learn but tough to master, and it can be annoying because you are going to be sitting around between turns checking. There's a reference sheet for all the power tiles. The power tiles have just got iconography on them, so you have to keep, especially in your first few games, you'll be checking them reference sheets quite a lot just to see what the different power tiles do and the different divine intervention cards do. But that for me is just a minor gripe. I've seen recently the second edition was on Kickstarter, but I have to say I'm more than happy with my first edition, even though the box is a bit rickety and worn now. But this will not be getting replaced in my collection anytime soon. And that was number 11 on my list, Kemet. So there you have it. That's my top 15 to 11. I would be delighted if you would leave some comments below on whether you agree with some of my selections or disagree, or whether you agree with some of the comments I've made about the games or disagree. Please feel free to leave some feedback in the comments. And if you like this video too, please subscribe. You can check me out on Instagram at Tom Plays Board Games. I've actually got a giveaway going on my Instagram at the moment. I'm giving away a complete collection of Anachrony, Essential Edition, the miniature set and the expansion pack. So check my Instagram out if you want to get involved in that giveaway. And until the next time, where I'll be counting down my top 10 to 6 games, I'll see you later.